Has it been bad, has it?
Yeah, it's been a lot of traffic, as you can imagine. But yeah, we're back with Gwyn Thurlow. You gave Matt Gibson a good run for his money with most popular episode last year, and so I put big pressure onto Kieran when he came on. Says he's got to beat you out for numbers and reach. But yeah, how have you been the last, what has it been, 6 months or so, mate? Did you manage to get out for a hunt with Cam Henderson and Kiwis and Internationals?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, good to join you again, Ryan. And I guess with the other guys, it's the more you can get hunting out there, the better, actually. So I'm glad that the two hunting podcasts are doing really well. It's fantastic, eh? And talking about hunting, it's good to see hunting in the media, and Jacinta's talking about it, Grant Robertson, and hot topic.
Yeah,
which is good.
Yeah, no, it's I say any publicity is good publicity. So if the conversation's out there in the media and people then turn around and look at us, I guess that's where our responsibility falls down to be showing it in a good light, I guess. Hey, and that's what you're doing when you're writing articles and things like that. Your Instagram page. Where do your sort of ethics lie with that?
Oh, I think it's fantastic that there's a really hot debate at the moment. There's an explosion of hunting, talking about social hunting influencers, people that are influencing, the way that hunting's seen on social, and and all the guys that are making the shows. You've got awesome talent, and it's focused on the hunting industry, which like we've never seen before, and it's only positive, I think. All the guys seem to work really well and are encouraging of each other. It's a really good, exciting time to be in the hunting industry, I think. It's really, really good. And and speaking of, you mentioned Cam right at the start. Yeah, we managed to get in for a week's chamois hunt, which was awesome, and quickly typed up his story to go with his awesome photos, and that's out in his latest journal, which is really good. So interesting times to be a hunter, that's for sure. Not a lot of hunting at home because I'm in lockdown, but looking forward to being able to get out soon, really.
Yeah. So I guess, as you said last time, chamois is your sort of major animal to chase, but I'm sure you've missed out on the raw, mate. What had been your plans?
Yeah, I'd booked ferries. I was heading down North Canterbury, so heading down there for a week. Had that locked in from work, and that was the first big sort of disappointment from the lockdown, was having that cancelled. And then I've drawn a TAR ballot for the first week of May, and with the new level 3, no wilderness restrictions, and obviously all TAR hunting is mostly on public land, and all my TAR hunting that's a no-go now too. So my 2 big weeks of the year really sort of stopped dead by COVID-19.
How have you reconciled that, Matt?
Oh, look, I've got a lot of opportunities to go hunting still, and even though the raws, you only get 1 raw a year, and there's only so many raws in your life, I think there's a lot more raws ahead. And I think the health side of it takes precedence for me. I mean, you can agree or disagree with the approach, but I've got vulnerable people in my family, and I'm happy to sit tight and make sure that they're safe and look after my wife and my boy. And there'll be more times to go hunting.
Yeah, that's a pretty big thing, isn't it? Like, you and I are young enough and dumb enough to think we're bulletproof out there. But if you had an accident and ended up somewhere, or you got exposed and brought it home to someone that can't, quite handle it, then you probably wouldn't forgive yourself. really, just for the sake of chasing a trophy.
That's right. I mean, well, hunting for me and hunting for you is pure recreation, right? That's what it is for me, and it's a passion and soon to be my day job, but at the moment it's just pure recreation. And I think you need to have things in perspective around, your family comes first, then your job, and then if you've got your family looked after and you've got your job, and then you can do things for fun. And, sort of that's the kind of order of priority for me, really.
Yeah, and I know I'm speaking from a pretty privileged place. Like, there's 650 hectares here to walk around and observe and look out at. And like I was telling you before, I in between a fencing job with my mate, he had to go get some stuff, and I went for a walk into the bush block and laid eyes on a young stag. But, like you say, even for me, that sort of stuff still doesn't really fall in the hunting category. It was literally a 5-minute nose poke, and I was kind of like, oh, that's cool. But yeah, like you say, the recreation side of it, I'm looking up at the Ruahinis going, man, be cool to go for a walk up there. It's again, in a privileged place. Yeah.
Do a day walk soon, mate. Day walk level 3. Take your camera.
Yeah. Well, I'm driving up to Pukekohe. You spoke about family. I'm going to spend some time with my daughter in level 3 and enjoy it. You mentioned soon to be day job. For those that have missed the the publication on NZDA Facebook page, and I shared it on my Stag Facebook page. What's the new Gwyn Thurlow going to be?
Yeah, well, I'm leaving the corporate law job, and I'm soon to start as the Deerstalkers CEO and in-house legal counsel. So taking a big sort of career change and start there full time on the 1st of June. So I'm just sort of working from home on my day job with all my corporate clients and getting up to speed with the Deerstalkers, and really excited about it. Really excited to turn my skills and knowledge towards hunting and working for the benefit of hunters. So yeah, that's the big news, and it's a big thing for the Deerstalkers too, because they have they've needed to have a full-time professional person on board, and it's I think it's been a long time coming, and it was a brave decision, and it wasn't taken lightly by me either to put my name into the hat. They sort of advertised the role late last year, and it's been a very thorough process, and it's obviously a Wellington job, so I had a bit of an edge being here already, and having the legal background probably helps, in the professional background. So it'll be interesting. It'll be very challenging. There's lots of problems facing hunters, and it's just a really exciting opportunity, I think, for the whole hunting sector, because we'll be able to do a lot of things, speak to a lot of the key players in government, and it's exciting times, I think, especially coupled with Tim Gale getting on the Game Animal Council, and TAR Foundation really taking off last year. We've got Seeker Foundation doing awesome stuff, Wapiti Foundation. So it's just exciting to work with all these people, join a few dots, and just have full-time person focusing on the big issues for hunters.
Mate, that gets me bloody excited. And when I saw that advertised, I was like, that's really cool. For those of us that just looked at it and thought, that's cool, wonder who that's going to be, what's the sort of job description going for the CEO's role? What's some of the aims that you sort of thought that I could dive into this?
Yeah, so I mean, the CEO role is one element. So it's obviously there's a lot of operational stuff. People probably don't realise NZDA is a really big NGO, so it's a big non-government organisation. It's made up of 49 branches. Those branches, which you're part of one, have a network of members, and we all have our local issues, and then they all feed up to big picture issues like the arms bill, gun ranges, access for hunting, um, liaising with advocating for access through private land to public land, dealing with Department of Conservation on their big issues, so managing game animals in national, public lands, and making sure that the viewpoint of the hunter is put into these specific areas that affect us. So, that's sort of one level, and then the other level is making sure we become more professional in the way the deer stalkers do things, and communicating with our members and doing all the things that people seem to expect of the deer stalkers, and doing them really well. And then the second thing is building up the capability of the deer stalkers. So, growing the advocacy capabilities, and giving support to branches. So there's a lot, and then the flip side is building out the hunter training course, so training up members, and making people actually just a bit more aware of what the deer stalkers do. Because you'll probably know it's all run by committees, and it's very well run, and it's all run on a local level. It just sort of needs a little bit of national guidance, and that's sort of going to be my job, is putting a face to it, representing hunters and trying to change the image of hunters within government, and making hunting a part of all the decisions that are made by the Department of Conservation, or when access is, or when not to do hunting, wara operations, or getting more access. So I mean, the list is huge. It's a big job, and but I'm excited about it because I'm super passionate about hunting, and especially hunting for recreational purposes. I know there's the guiding industry, there's the wara industry, there's the offshore hunters, there's private land hunters, but for me it's pure public land recreational hunting. That'll be sort of where I'll try to have that.
Epic, man. So you said about advocacy there, and also the gun ranges and communication. And so where does the Council of Licensed Firearm Owners going to fit in with you guys? They're obviously doing a big push at the moment on the advocacy side of people. How do they sort of link in with the likes of NZDA?
They're very closely linked, actually. The NZDA is a big supporter of COLFO, big funder of COLFO. So every NZDA member this year has donated $5 of their membership fee to support COLFO. So the NZDA actually gives COLFO, I think it's going to be around 35,000, 40,000 of funding this year, just by its membership association alone. NZDA is one member association of COLFO. So it's supported by a whole lot of different groups, sporting shooting, various other, pistol clubs New Zealand. All of us fit into advising them. They're sort of the knowledge matter experts on firearm issues. So they've got really good technical knowledge. They've got very, very good passionate people on their council, and they sort of take the lead on that, and always been well supported by the deer stalkers. So they're a really important function as well, and they do a really good job communicating all of the technical legal issues and the rights of gun owners, and advising the deer stalkers on those kinds of things. And we have to really thank the team in the last year for stepping up. So Nicole McKee's done a fantastic job, and Michael Dowling, they're the chairperson there. They've really stepped up to challenge the government on firearms, and as well as the deer stalkers. So I'm a big supporter of COLFO, and if you're a deer stalker, you do contribute to them, and you should also donate, and you should also join them as an individual member as well, I think, because they do a fantastic job.
Yeah, man. While we're on the topic of the last year with firearms, how well received do you think your presentation was? And in hindsight, we acknowledged it all in their sort of findings towards the select committee, which we're sort of hearing about in drips and drabs through Colfo.
Yeah, I mean, the process was interesting. The Deerstalkers was invited on a special invitation to speak as an organisation. So we were one of the few organisations approached directly by the select committee of the government to come and present. We were given 15 minutes, which was more than double what any normal submitter to the select committee process was given the opportunity to talk to their own submission. So we did hold a special sort of place in that process. What we did is we wrote a really long detailed submission, and then we had to distill all of our concerns down into 2 parts of that speech. And I presented one part, which was the legal side of things, because that's where my strengths are around, you know, the fundamental principles of, you know, privacy, doctor-patient confidentiality, your rights to not be detained or searched unreasonably by police without, you know, a reasonable cause or suspicion. So all of these sort of fundamental basic pillars of our legal system were seemingly ignored by the people who wrote that law. And so it's up to, you know, people like us. You know, the Law Society criticised the law heavily for breaching basic Bill of Rights issues, you know. And so we just needed to hold them to account. David Seymour did a great job on explaining that to them as well. And then the other point is the practical point, which Sharon Salmons, also a Deerstalker, spoke to, which was, you know, if you make these really strict guidelines, you're going to push, you know, going to gun ranges or having firearms underground, out of the safe arena, out of the daylight into the shadows, so to speak. So pointing out the practical effects of their laws, making it harder for, you know, clubs like the Deerstalkers to actually run a range. So that it's just facts to them and making them think about things from a practical point of view as well as a legal fundamental point of view, as well as making sure we do by our members. So Deerstalkers runs a whole lot of ranges. All of our members have firearms. We're all good people. We're all highly vetted, and you know, just explaining that the knee-jerk reaction to the you know, the Christchurch shootings through this law would not be solved by the way that this law has been framed up. So just pushing back on the ideology and on the assumptions, and we just hope that those are heard when we hear back on the final reading. So, you know, we've just got to keep speaking the truth, really, talking about the practical side of things, and that's how the Deerstalkers has always done things. But I guess now it'll be my job to actually not only do those things and work behind closed doors and have those meetings, but also communicate it to the hunting public or the gun owning public about what we're doing. Because people expect far more communication. They expect it instantly on the day that you do it. And if you're not being seen to be doing it, then people think you're not doing anything, which is a big problem at the moment. Is people are quick to criticise, but they don't give any thought or understanding. They're not willing to understand the issue themselves. They're just willing to, you know, type out a quick message of criticism. And I think we need to give, you know, the likes of the Deerstalkers a little bit more breathing room sometimes than they're actually given. Because, I mean, they're all on a voluntary basis, right? So we took time off work. We spent nights and weekends writing it, checking it. And no one says thank you for that, which is a shame, really.
And I think a lot of people, again, give the likes of the Deerstalkers and the Animal Council, Colpo and things, a little bit of breathing room as well, in the capacity that just because the decision that's made by a select committee or by the government or whatever is against what you as an individual believes in, or you know, it didn't go your way for your ideals, doesn't necessarily mean that these groups haven't advocated on your behalf. You know, it's not their decision to make, it's their decision to advocate on your behalf. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we put our position very strongly, and we're always making submissions and trying to influence people. And I think people don't really understand how government works a lot of the time, and the separation of, you know, the government bureaucrats versus Parliament versus select committee process versus, you know, when you're in the debating chamber and voting. And at the end of the day, this comes down to the political landscape and who is forming the government and what their ideology is. And so what we're seeing here with the firearms law and the way it was drafted is it's come from the current government. So it's their viewpoint, and it all comes back to who you vote for and who you're putting in charge of the select committees. And if at the end of the day the deerstalkers can put all the practical information, put the facts on the table, explain the practical outcomes of the law, or tell them that their law is a bad law, but we're not the one voting for the law when we're not the one that wrote the law. And if you've got a problem with the people who are going to pass the law, it all comes down to the election, right? So read the policies of the people you're voting for and make sure that those policies are aligning with your viewpoint. And we get a say this year, I think, this September, we all get a say on who's going to write the laws for the next 3 years. And people need to vote wisely when they do, and they should go and vote because it is important to, you know, influence how Parliament operates and the laws that are passed, which is done by parliamentarians. So I think people need to realise that. You know, there was a lot of submissions on the arms bill, and the NZDA is just one submission of many. So we hold no more weight than any one individual submission, other than we were given 15 minutes to speak versus 7. So you know, people just need to realise that, and you know, make their own decisions and vote.
Yeah, and like, you know, I'm not an active supporter in any way, but I've been hugely both appreciative and impressed by the work of David Seymour over the last 18 months, and not just in the firearms bill, but also his relationship with the rural sector as well. And I guess, you know, again, you look to the rural sector and you look at the amount of sheer volume of submissions that have gone into the freshwater policy, but then again, the outcomes of that policy has left a lot of people in the rural sector scratching their heads, particularly when it then goes to the regional level, and all these different regional councils are on different levels. You know, that's like you say, when you're looking to vote, don't just sort of hang your head on that one little aspect. Have a real broad look at the policies across the board, and sort of see where your allegiance lies, I guess, and be willing to change if you disagree with things. Don't just sort of go along with what you've always done or what your family's always done, because you know you're your own person and you're the only one in the booth that gets to do that tick. You know, David's been very obvious in his stance in supporting of hunting in the rural sector. You know, he's turned up to the Seeker show and things. Is there any other parliamentarians that have sort of put their hand up and made a relationship with the likes of the Deerstalkers and the Game Animal Council? And correct me if I'm wrong, Game Animal Council came out of United Future. Peter Dunn, was that right?
Yes. So, well, there's a lot in that. So, I mean, firstly, I would encourage everyone to read all the policies of all the parties. And you're right, don't just do what you think you know. Go and educate yourself. You might be surprised with who your worldview aligns with, or you'll be surprised with what you thought you knew, and then when you read something about one party or another party, that wasn't what you thought was their policy. So everyone, you know, you've got to be informed, otherwise you're not making a good decision. Then, you know, David Seymour, to talk to your point about him, he's obviously been a big advocate for freedom. He's a libertarian, he's a principled libertarian, so he is always going to go that route on all his debates. So he is all for personal freedom, maximising that, minimising government. And so, you know, he's going to support those principled approaches to everything that he does, which is good, but it can be bad. So you know, I'm not saying David is good or bad, but that's the ACT Party philosophy. So you need to understand that as well. And then your last point around how the Game Animal Council was formed, that's right. So he was a big player in that, and that was formed with the support of him and a lot of work around that to form that as a statutory body. So that council, similarly to what Fish and Game do around advising the Minister of Conservation, implementing small game hunting, duck shooting and fishing, Game Animal Council is there to advise on big game. So they are both important, and it's long overdue that we had the Game Animal Council. And you know, people do need to understand that we should all be supporting them and pushing for Game Animal Council to get funding. And again, that comes back to political choices. So the current Minister of Conservation is Eugenie Sage. She's forest and bird through and through. Her whole career has been as a staunch forest and bird employee. She's worked for them. And her worldview is all pro-native fauna and flora. So she is a purist conservationist with her ideology. And until we get a more a different type of personality as the Minister of Conservation, someone that comes from probably a different political party, so Eugenie's Greens, we're not going to see a change in approach to the way that the Minister of Conservation directs either the Game Animal Council, Department of Conservation, or the Fish and Game, because ultimately they all report to the Minister of Conservation. So again, it comes back to the political choices and understanding the system and putting your vote to where you believe you're going to get the best outcome for those positions. So, you know, and that's why the deerstalkers is always important, because we're not political. We don't support political parties, but we support principles. So if any political party supports our views, we'll stand up and say we agree with that. But if any political party says something that we're opposed to, we'll get up and say we don't agree with that either. So for all that the deerstalkers it's got the ability to criticise any government at any point, at any political party or any political view at any point, and we have to maintain good relationships with those government functions, which are staffed by bureaucrats and not politicians. So the deerstalkers is the one great constant, really, and that we have a massive institutional knowledge, a massive history, a lot of mana, and we get asked to give advice. So, you know, we'll freely criticise whoever we need to get the point of the hunter across. And that's going to be my job, is doing that well and doing it more effectively. We've done it, you know, with a bunch of volunteers in the past, but now we're going to do it with a full-time professional. And so it'll be interesting to see how we do that in the next year or two.
Yeah, definitely from my perspective, this last government has challenged my worldview quite a lot, and you know, it's definitely motivated me more so to read into the policy. I don't know if you could educate me on this or not, but is there any way that you can sort of look at a party and get an understanding of who may receive a portfolio and who would be, what would their views be in relation to portfolios? Is that something that you could look into, or is that all after the fact, once the seats are counted and the government's formed, then they go and decipher who gets various portfolios, like you say, Eugenie Sage, you know, Greens, somewhat minority, joined with Labour, and then they lobby for the conservation side of things?
I think this coalition government now represents the fact that Labour needed the support of the Greens and NZ First, so they had to give up the powerful minister positions and not give it to their spokespersons. So the way Parliament works in New Zealand is you have, you know, your main party. Sometimes it can be one party, but we have a proportionate we have a proportionate government where it's all done on percentage of votes. So you have to form governments with other parties, basically. So there'll always be a minor party or two involved, unless there's a clear majority. And I think New Zealand, we've always had Labour and National sitting around like in the 40%. So they're never going to get the clear, 51% or whatever it's 63 seats, I think, to govern alone. There's always going to be a minor party that will take some of the fringe votes. And in this case, much to everyone's surprise, Winston Peters went with Labour, even though they're not politically aligned on a lot of issues. And he joined up with the Greens, who they're certainly not politically aligned if you look at their manifestos and their policies. They're just actually quite opposite. So it's surprising, and the result of that is we've got a government that can't agree on anything, that hasn't really done much, and the minor parties have been the big winners. So the way that I would characterise this government is Labour has had to marginalise its own goals. Sure, it's raised minimum wage. Sure, they've got Grant Robinson, who's finance minister, but the real power or the real influences in the settings of New Zealand have been given to the Green Party through Eugenie, through her ministerial positions on, she's on the overseas investment portfolio, so she sits on that. So she's blocked anything to do with mining, anything to do with oil and gas, any exploration in national parks. So she sits on Department of Conservation. And then she is also Minister of Land Information, so LINZ. So she's basically got a very powerful trio of portfolios as a green ideologist. So a lot of the outcome on how we're able to use our resources in New Zealand sits with her philosophy. And then you've got NZ First, who obviously got Winston as deputy, and then they've got, they've got Shane Jones with his $3 billion fund, and they got to spend all the surplus money. So NZ First got the ability to basically spend money on the things that it thought was important, and the Greens got to manage the parts of New Zealand that it thought that was important. And then there's been very left to do for Labour, and so they've just, while Jacinda's an amazing leader, and you can't fault her leadership, she's just basically they've effectively done nothing in their time in government. And their main issue was Kiwi build, and everything they try and do, they don't do it well, they don't plan well, and they don't execute it well. So I'm interested to see how that's going to unfold after we get out of COVID lockdown, because they show good leadership now, but we actually need them to really stand up and get us out of this, because it's going to be a very rocky road for the next few years for a lot of New Zealanders. So and then to go to your question is, how do you pick who's going to be in government? Well, every party has a spokesperson. So National, who are in opposition now, have a spokesperson on various issues. Their spokesperson on firearms is Brett Hudson. So you mentioned David Seymour was at Seeker Show. Brett Hudson was there speaking about National's views on the arms bill and on that. And so you can see who they're going to put forward potentially by who holds the spokesperson's portfolio now, and that's publicly stated. So you can sort of see who's potentially going to get the big ministerial positions of influence. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. And this whole thing has definitely made me take note of the spokespeople from the opposition and what they're saying and how that sits. So yeah, that does make sense. You brought up there the hunts course and also firearms legislation. I may be wrong that the system that Mountain Safety had previous has had a bit of an overhaul. What's that sort of relationship there with NZDA hunts course, Mountain Safety, and then firearms licensing, which obviously goes through the police?
So there's no direct relationship, although there's sort of a interdependence. So you'd know. So when you want to join the deer stalkers, one of the assumptions is that you've got your firearms license usually, or you're well down the track of getting it, because shooting and having a firearm is a key part to be, a hunter for the most part in New Zealand. I mean, there's bow hunting and pig hunting, but for big game hunting, you're mainly going to have a rifle of some description. And the Mountain Safety Council, police issue a firearms license, and then the training and passing the test is all done through Mountain Safety Council, which is another NGO. So they get a lot of government funding to deliver that. The Deerstalkers used to provide a lot of volunteers for that, but that was restructured, as you mentioned, a few years ago. So now the Deerstalkers basically offer the hunts course, which is a training course. So all the branches around New Zealand have a hunts convener or a hunts committee that will offer a training course once a year, maybe twice a year for big branches, and they deliver a curriculum for new hunters. And so not everyone has the benefit of an uncle or a dad or a good mate who's an experienced hunter. And so a good way to learn how to hunt if you've got no contacts is to join the Deerstalkers and get yourself on a hunts program. And it's a really good program. Then they've just rewritten the curriculum, modernized it, and there's a new hunts manual coming out. So it's basically a guidebook for hunting and how to hunt. And then you get buddied up with experienced Deerstalkers. They'll teach you everything you need to know about getting started and all the basic principles. And then they do practical as well. So you do all the classroom stuff, and then you go outside and do overnighters, go hunting. And then you once you've done that, you can go on club hunts within the NZDA. You've got the confidence. You've met a buddy the same sort of level, or you've met a few people, 10 people, same sort of experience, and away you go. So, and we're really the only organisation in New Zealand that offers that, that can have those volunteers running that course. And it's very cheap. I think they don't even really cover the costs on it. So, you're in a classroom setting, you get a guidebook, and then you get these guys taking you out, sharing their time and their knowledge on hunting. So, I'd like to really see the NZDA publicise that course a lot more and people being a lot more aware of what that course is, and making sure that branches offer it to the local area. So that's the hunts course, and I think that's a key thing that the Deerstalkers can do, in the coming years, is really build up that program.
Yeah, it was definitely in my introduction into hunting. Hunting was something that was always around in my life, and I found out why my sort of father never took me is because him growing up through the 70s on Glenary Station, where the helicopters were going up the top of the range there and plucking out dead animals and then live animals. There wasn't really much for him to shoot, so all he chased was rabbits, and then down south we were just too busy sporting. So yeah, hearing about the hunts course was definitely my motivation for checking out a Deerstalkers Association, and then coming back. I'd already done a few hunts myself, but it's still one of those things that I'd love to go on. And I've had a few people now sort of say, "Oh, we want to come hunting with you," and I think I've got the confidence now to take them. But yeah, it'd be great to say, "Yeah, come along to the hunts course with me."
Yeah, exactly. And it gives you the theory and like common sense stuff that probably are common sense to you, but you need to walk into the wind. You need to think about how the wind will change on the sunny side of the hill, and the cold, the shadow side, and different times of day, and what's a pig footprint sign like? What's this dropping? Is that a deer? Is it a fallow deer? All these really little, I don't know what you call them, things that you need to know to be an effective hunter, that you can learn only through someone pointing it out to you sometimes and explaining it to you, or you could do a lot of trial and error and spend lots of years trying to learn for yourself. But the best way to learn anything, and especially hunting, it's almost like an art form, really. It's you need a good hunter. They think they're good because they've got an instinct, or I'm just a really good hunter, or I'm a lucky hunter. But there'll be a checklist of things you do in your mind that you don't even realize you're doing, and it's sort of explaining that little subconscious checklist to the people that haven't even thought about it or what to do. So, you know, you can read books and that, but it's really good to have someone explain things to you. And it's as simple as, you know, a lot of guys buy a rifle, they go to the gun range, and they'll shoot 40, 50 rounds to sight their gun in. You go to a deer stalker's gun range and speak to the gun range officer, and he can get your rifle sighted in with 3 shots. You know, so you can spend hundreds of dollars doing it by yourself and doing it the hard way, where you can just say, hey, I'd like to learn a few things from the experienced guys, get the benefit of their experience, and instead of shooting 100 rounds of ammo downrange, you shoot 3 bullets, and you can use the next 97 shooting deer with. You know, it's, I guess that's the easiest way to visualize it. Is you just shortcut your learning by buddying up with someone with, you know, a lot of knowledge, and then you go to a club night and you'll meet a lot of people that you'll form friends with and go on hunts with, and they'll take you to their spots, and you'll get some good mates out of these kinds of arrangements that you never will unless you do join a hunting club. You know?
Yeah, and if anyone wants an example of the what not to do, you can just look at me. 10 years to get a public land deer,
and how long did it take for you to get onto the deer stalkers and then shoot a deer?
Yeah, well, I moved back to Hawke's Bay in May. Went with Ben in August, and I'd done two trips into the car workers by myself, and then after that, the third time was a success on the public land. So yeah, it took 3 months to shoot a deer, 5 months to shoot a public land deer, and then I've shot another public land deer since. So yeah, and again, shooting with a buddy, old Dave Perry from Venator. He'd scoped out an area, and yeah, the next weekend we were in there walking to it, and sure enough, it was a good spot. He'd chosen a good area. So yeah, going with mates is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the best things is you really get to know people on a hunt as well. You go on a day hunt with someone, and the things you talk about, the ground you cover, and you really get to know each other really well. And it's almost like you know, you get better friends out of hunting than you do out of any other thing. I can tell you that. Some of my best mates are hunting mates. The you get to know each other so well just because, you know, just the environment you're in and the time you spend together.
Yeah, it's what when I was talking to Toby Hines from Hunting Camp Down Under in Australia, that's what we're talking about. If you're not willing to have a good conversation on the hunt, you might not get invited back. So it's that pressure cooker situation where it's like, oh, I've got to keep the conversation going, or this isn't going to be much fun.
Yeah. Although not too much talking. Only during. Yeah, and that's the funny thing with learner hunters is you actually got to be quiet. It's like you need patience and I don't know, a lot of concentration, and learning how to be quiet as well is another skill you learn from hunting. Is sometimes you don't need to say anything, just a look, bit of a look there.
Yeah.
You know, body language. You need to read each other. It's you know, whole nother level to hunting that people don't even realize.
Yeah, and the other thing about going and doing it yourself and reading the book, you're sort of out there and noticing something, and then you kind of go, well, what was that again? And then you got to go back home and read the book again, and then go, oh yeah, that was that thing, and the moment's passed. So yeah, it's a very, very slow process.
Yeah, a lot of the good hunters would have been hunting behind their dad or their uncle or their mates since they were teenagers, and then they sort of have the skills or the confidence to do it by themselves, and then, you know, you make stuff up by yourself. But you just need to learn. It's a gradual process. You can't be a good hunter just when you go and, you know, and it's building up the gear, building up the knowledge, building up the you know, the bush skills, how to not get lost, like having the confidence to just point in a direction that you know the deer's there, but it's, and getting yourself back to the truck or back to your tent. You know, there's so many stages of evolution through, you know, as you become a hunter, and everyone's at different stages, and you don't really realize that, and people can talk a lot and they can seem real experienced, but they've just watched a lot of YouTube, or they've done it once or twice, and it worked for them once or twice, but it might have been a pure fluke, and then so it's interesting. And then the real humble guys that are out there every weekend don't talk a big game, but they're the genuine hunters. They're the ones feeding their family, feeding their whānau, giving away meat, and the real good guys just generally don't do all the talking either. So
Yeah,
it's interesting. You can never assume too much about hunters, really.
There's one thing. Last time I was hanging out with Ben Humphrey, he sort of said, do you know these two people were at the hunting club? And I said, no. And he said, have you talked to them yet? I said, no. He said, shit, you gotta go talk to them. They'll tell you some things. And say, yeah, exactly right. They're not the ones in the middle of the room making all the noise. They're the ones leaning on the bar, observing what everyone else is saying, are they?
Yeah, exactly.
And then the same
talk to the old guys.
Yeah, there's one bloke there that's friends with my boss at work, and he's not short to have a yarn with you about hand loading and what he's putting down range at the time. They're things that might make the 1% difference and save you a bit of money too.
They might.
Or spend more money.
I'm into hand loading now, and it's really rewarding. It saves you a little bit of money, but the time probably outweighs the benefit of the money, because you could go and do another hour's work and make up the money by the hours you spend wasting throwing ammo down range and trying to get it just perfect. But it's part of the hobby, right? The passion.
Yeah.
It's just another level. If you make your own hand load and you go and shoot an animal with something that you've put together and it hasn't failed on you and it's worked, it's really good. So it's just another level. And I'd encourage everyone to, when they get comfortable, to start hand loading, because it's like it's really like meditation as well. You can zone out when you do it, and you can it's really good just to chill out in the gun room making hand loads.
Yeah. You put up the fact that a lot of good hunters have either been sort of brought up around their uncles or their dads, and they've got that confidence walking through the bush and things like that. And then you said about the wind, and a lot of hunters are associated with rural people, and definitely being out on the farm and walking around the hills, it's something that you really start to observe all these different wind patterns. And then even Remy Warren's just put up a decent 20-30 minute podcast about reading the wind.
Right.
How much does it do you get it wrong as a hunter? Because I know even this morning there was no wind to wear him, but that stag was like, getting out of here. He must have had his nostrils flaring, trying to figure out where I was.
Yeah. Oh, look, with deer, with any big game, if you don't have the wind on your side, you just might as well not go hunting. Their sense of smell is incredible. There's so many examples. Like, people think that deer have a sixth sense, but I actually think that smell, like the sixth sense, where they talk about the deer that was 300 meters away that just lifted its head up, looked, and ran off. And there's no way that they could have heard me, and the wind was right, and rah rah. But that wind could have been from your wind 100 meters back that swirled around the gully or swirled around the valley and then hit deer. I mean, for an example, me and my brother were last raw up in the high country in Canterbury, and we saw a big 16-point stag holding 2 hinds in the head basin, and we were just, it's one of the most exciting things you can possibly see, is a big stag up there. We saw him right on daybreak in the shadow of the valley. He was laying down with his 2 girls, and then we spent all morning getting to him. The wind was perfect. And then when we were about 500 meters away and we were just about to find somewhere to have a good clean shot, he just winded us, and for no particular reason. The wind we were seeing perfect. He definitely couldn't have heard us, and you knew that he just smelt us. So, and then your dream stag, it was my brother's shot, and we were literally just gutted, and I've had that happen in the raw, where when you're calling in a stag or roaring something, they're just trying to cut your wind. So you know, they're just trying to smell who you are, whether they should come in and fight you, or you know, and they'll do a big circle, and you've got to sort of catch them. And a lot of the time, you'll see a deer behind you. So if you know, you'll see some movement off the side, and he's trying to sneak in, and you know, people. The wind is the really key factor. And obviously in the bush it's really important, or when you're trying to get close for an ethical shot. And that's where these long range guns, rigs, big long range setups, they just eliminate the wind as a factor. So you can just set up on something and not have to worry about being a good deer stalker, because you can line up from 600 meters, take the wind out of the equation, and use your tools to do the walking. And that's one way of hunting, but it's not my way of hunting. I'm not a extreme long range shooter or a long range hunter. I like to get close and have that. You'll lose animals, but you'll have more fun. You have more fun along the way. So that's, you know, wind is, you need to understand wind to be a good hunter effectively.
Yeah, that's definitely my appeal with picking up the bow is that stalking and sort of stuff. And you're saying about how they cut the wind. That's what that stag this morning was doing. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at where I'd been, and like you say, came around me, and then he just decided that he'd get out of there. And I was yarning to Karnan last night, and that's what he said about bow hunting. You know, I was giving him a little bit of stick about his feature on the news there, and he said, yeah, well, you know, the reason why I have success is not so much about my bow hunting, and he is actually a good shot with the bow, but he said
Yes.
it's about him stalking in and getting in the right spot to be able to take that shot. That's you know, and it's the same with Caden Willis and Andre Adler Party. They pay so much emphasis on getting in close that you just maximise the opportunity of that lethal shot, which is, you know, the thing that you pray as you're walking into the deer that shot that you took was lethal and did the damage, eh?
Yeah, I mean, those guys are awesome. I've got a lot of respect for bow hunters, and the three guys you mentioned. They'll understand. They'll be recalibrating constantly based on wind, and they will have thought long and hard about their approach, you know, to the animal, like you say. And then the wind is the big thing for them, and then movement. Like they've just got to be absolutely stealthy. So you know, it's anyone that shoots anything with a bow deserves a lot of respect.
Even rabbits.
Even rabbits. Rabbits are probably harder. I mean, they've got vision. They've got eyes in the sides of their head. Like they've got 360 vision, rabbits. So if you can shoot a rabbit with a bow, you're doing really well.
That's so crafty, yeah. He's
Oh, yeah.
like I said, I've been chasing around the faces, and one the other night just kept like putting the tree in itself and the tree between me and it, and it was just like even where I moved, it just moved around the tree. I was like, God, you're crafty.
Oh, they are, and they'll sit tight. Like the amount of times you get a rabbit that you trip over and it sprints off like 90 degrees, and they just sit tight. Yeah,
And they work
crafty rabbits.
in pairs as well. That's another thing I found. You'll like be stalking in on one, and its mates in between you and it. And then it darts off. Then the other one darts off.
Yeah,
And then you just it's
yeah.
hopeless.
I do a lot of rabbit shooting, it, and offhand as well. Like it's really good for your shooting. So if you know people are like, oh, I'm not, you know, don't get enough hunting in and that. You know, it's all, you know, when you're doing big game hunting, you might get one chance, but with rabbits you can practice your skills.
Mm.
You can get really good at shooting, offhand shooting, shooting when they're moving. You know, I think small game hunting, everyone shouldn't look down on it. You should actually embrace it and get better, and get a gun, buy a 22 that handles like your rifle, because then you practice, you know, same length of pull, you know, same weight, so that when you're out rabbit shooting, which is good for pest control, and most farmers would love to have guys coming out and shooting rabbits on their farm. You know, you can get a lot of skills from just going pest shooting. I think, you know, you should do it.
Yeah, it's been good. And he had a bit of a plague at his place, so I got a
Good.
couple with the bow at his house as well. It was bloody awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Mate, today's Anzac Day, and you put up some photos of a rifle that you've got that's got Transvaal on the side. Is that, what's the story behind that?
That wasn't the one I put up, but that I put up the butt plate of a long tom, so 303 long tom.
Yeah.
So that was a rifle I've had for a little while. It's got no family history, but I got it on an antique arms auction. So I've been looking out for years and years for a really good long tom, fully wooded, good bore, just to represent New Zealand's, history through wars. So that's one of the early Enfields. So it's not the Shorten one that, the classic World War II one that is more popular. This is one of the old Mark One, super long, lots of wood, really heavy, clunky thing that was kind of a transition rifle between where they ended up in later days to where they started out. But yeah, it's a really, really cool rifle. And I always take a time to think about Anzac Day because my grandfathers and my great grandfather were all in the army and went to war, Japan and over in Europe. And my great grandfather, he was in the landing of Gallipoli, and he survived Gallipoli and went through World War One and came home. And so Anzac Day is sort of a really important day for me personally, and it's something that I always take the time to reflect on the people that sacrificed everything for our way of life here. And I love the rifles, I love the old 303s. I think everyone's got to have a 303, and I love the German Morsers as well. So I've got a VZ33 Morser, and I've got an Argentinian one, as well as a semi-sporterized K98. So you just got to think the things that these old rifles went through, where they were carried, if they were, they would have shot at each other, and to get into the hands of me after a whole massive history going around the world and coming back home. Obviously the German rifles were, the Argentinian one was probably surplus, so that would have been in a box somewhere and bought by a dealer and shipped here. But the two Sporter Mausers that I have, they would have definitely been trophies of war brought back here by people and sporterized and turned into hunting rifles. So yeah, you gotta sort of respect the past, I think, sometimes, and today is one of those days where you got to reflect on that.
Yeah, it's very intense, and like many people have said, it is one of those things that helps you reconcile missing out on a roar. You might, like you said, your great grandfather landing at Gallipoli and fighting through the whole thing and making it back. Like shit, there was 4 or 5 roars gone, and meanwhile, all the consequences of dealing with that is just far out.
That's right. Yeah, it's you can't forget that, right? The sacrifices that these guys made, and it was a real shame that the War Memorial Museum, the Peter Jackson one, ran out of funding, and Massey wanted the building back because that was an awesome museum. If you ever went through that, or the one at Te Papa now, you can go and see the museum display there, and that's just it's a massive sacrifice that our forefathers made for us to live in the way we have things in New Zealand right now. So and even times like this with the COVID and the lockdown and that, I mean, we're very lucky to be in New Zealand. The new battlefields are back in France and Germany and Italy, the UK. They're facing a massive amount of deaths from this virus, and it's really sad, isn't it?
And, our timing, might have just been good enough. We hope. We don't know what's going to happen as we go through winter, but yeah, you've still got to think that we're doing the right thing by staying at home. even as it, the numbers dwindle and it gets more and more frustrating, and we get more and more cavalier and disgruntled, and use hindsight to say, oh, maybe we did it wrong. But yeah, the information and, like you say, seeing what's happening elsewhere, you've just got to sort of hold yourself back a little bit, I guess, is the take-home message with that, I guess. I don't know.
I think you're right. No, I totally agree. I mean, people lose perspective and they do relax because it was all tense and there were deaths and numbers were going up and everyone can see the benefit. But then when you start getting numbers like 2 people today, 4 people, we've only lost 16 people of the high risk category. But and we're going to be alone. We're going to be effectively a quarantine island for a long time in New Zealand, because if we do eradicate it, there's no way that the government will let tourism back or people coming in, or they'll have to quarantine for 14 days, which, effectively only it's a one-way trip that people will do to go to quarantine for 14 days. So the way that the lifestyle that New Zealanders had, and there's going to be a lot of hardship and a lot of people are going to be affected by this. And, hunting is probably going to be a really important thing for a lot of these people, for like food, getting food, going pig hunting, getting the deer, feeding your family off wild meat is just probably going to be what gets a lot of these people through, a lot of these communities through, because the money's not going to be there, the jobs aren't going to be there. You look on the news and you feel really sorry for all the towns and the people that rely on tourism and foreign tourists, because they're effectively going to come out of this lockdown with no tourists, no clients, and it's going to be really hard for a lot of people.
You're already seeing,
my heart goes out to them.
Yeah, you're already seeing the effects of that with Ngāi Tahu shutting down their tourism arm straight away, and if people don't sort of realise the severity of that, that's like Franz Joseph Tourism, shot over jet, a number of locations in Queenstown, Ngāi Tahu holdings, and you just go, wow, that's outrageous.
It's going to be really tough, and at the moment we're all thinking about ourselves. We're thinking about our family or our bubbles, because we've been told to stick to your bubbles, and the only communication you have with are your bubbles, right? Or like you and me now, a lot of media, a lot of podcasts to listen to. But when people are allowed to have those conversations, and that's when the media will catch on to it, we'll start having more hard luck stories and more companies going under, and that'll be the real test of New Zealand. Like, this is easy. Like, we're most people have got a roof over their head. They can get enough toilet paper that they need, and the rest of the community will be generous to help those people. But what happens in year 2 of this, when this is like week 5, but then we're like a year down the track or 2 years down the track with this. So watch and see. And then on the flip side, for hunters, or for me as a big recreational hunter, and it's going to be totally different in going into our national parks, using our huts, having the ability to go on those great walks when you couldn't get a booking. Having, again, access to areas where there's going to be no tourists, having our parks back. And then I think the other thing is, New Zealanders are going to want to pick up their tramping boots and fill their packs up and go back into the backcountry. So we'll start to see less tourists in the backcountry and more Kiwis. And I hope people reconnect with our bush and reconnect with hunting. And I think we'll see a lot of people taking up hunting out of this, trying to get self-sufficient, realizing they didn't have any skills, and wanting to be, having, back to those sort of Kiwi culture sort of things, go camping, go hunting. I think we're going to see a big uptick in hunting personally. It's getting more popular anyway, but I think this will be a real big catalyst for people to go hunting.
Yeah, definitely. We were talking that last night about, as soon as this is open, it's coming. This summer might be a very good time to book in to do the Milford Track, or to do the Tongariro crossing, because it's just going to be that little bit of extra space. And we're talking about rabbits there. There's a good meal if you can knock over 3 or 4 rabbits and take them back home. And again, go back to Karen and Matthew at the Educated Hunter, their recipe book is sure to have a couple of rabbit recipes or hare recipes in there for people to dive into. I've got that rabbit there that are going to cook up with some garlic butter. It's bloody delicious.
Nice. I can't wait for that book. That's an awesome thing those guys are doing, putting that book together. It's good.
It's bloody awesome. And mate, carrying on with the infield there, you were saying that level 3, the museum's going to get back under construction. So what's the plan with that?
Yeah, so one of the big projects I'm involved with is the Hunting Museum. That was a casualty of COVID. So when we went to level 2, and then our main contractor, our big contractor here in Wellington, said we've got to shut the site down, wind everything down, and we were like, well, how are you going to keep it secure? What have you got put in? How far through are we? How long are we going to be on lockdown? So they got tools down, and they've been sitting at home until now as well. So they'll be picking things up again on Tuesday. The good thing is it's really well progressed. We've had a really good summer of weather here in Wellington. The guys on the site have been absolutely fantastic, like really good at what they do, and the project's come together really, really well. So the main building's all done. We got all the outside done, all the windows were in, all the doors are in, so it's all weather tight. We got the all the relining and the jibbing and all the first fix, so all the plumbing, electrical, everything. So when the guys get back in there, it's basically all the landscaping outside, entryways, all the painting, and all the lights and bathrooms and kitchen and all that to go in. So we were very lucky where we got to on our project, and we're hopeful to stick to the July finish date. We had a little bit of slippage early on, and then that sort of they caught up again. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it's all done in July, which is super exciting, because then we can actually build the museum and put everything on display.
I'm so pumped. It's going to be a really good excuse for me to get down to Wellington, that's for sure. Wow.
Yeah. It's going to be really good. People, it's not done on the number 8 wire mentality. It's done on, let's do this properly. Let's put the best stuff in there and make it amazing. Like, make it something to be proud of. So people when they come and see it, they'll be proud of it, I think.
Yeah, and like we were saying before, hunting is part of our heritage, and it's sort of gone through a little bit of a lull, and it was picking up again, and now its importance and the connection with the backcountry and our food is just going to be more and more front of mind, and then to have this sort of heritage of where we've come from, and I'm so pumped to learn about more and more of that heritage in this place is just going to be another string in the bow to hunters in New Zealand and of course the NZDA as well.
Exactly, and that's a good way to put it, really. And it's just amazing how hunting has been a major issue during a pandemic crisis. Like, the Prime Minister did a whole address about hunting, and the Minister of Sport had to permit hunting, and I think people have sort of failed to see that and acknowledge the fact that this is the most the biggest crisis that New Zealand's had in 100 years, the biggest health crisis, unprecedented. We've never had a lockdown, and yet hunting was a key issue. So it just, that alone shows how important hunting is to our culture. It's important to Māori. It's a big source of food and recreation for them, as well as all the private landowners. And then it's a massive part of recreation for people like me who live in the city. So every walk of life hunts, every walk of life gets out there from the richest person in New Zealand to the poorest. It's a great activity. It's and to have it represented on TV and spoken about and a hot issue just is it sort of supports my decision to become the Zstalkers CEO, because it is a big deal and we do need to give hunters a voice. And I'm looking forward to keeping on doing that because it's awesome.
Yeah, bloody cool, mate. I'll have you shown your notes, the places to reach you, the Facebook page and the Instagram, and as well as NZDA and NZDA Heritage Trust in the show notes. What could I get you to leave us with? Maybe a bit of good news. What do you sort of hope that come level 2 we all get out of this, and what do you think a roar off is going to do for us?
I think people have had a lot of time to form new habits out of this and reconnect with their families, get to know their kids and their families really well out of this. They've learnt to know what's important to them. I think we need to support each other again. The best thing I've seen is where I live in Wellington is we go out for a walk every couple of days, and I've seen my neighbour, we say hello politely. That's amazing. Like that's a totally different thing, and I'd love to see New Zealanders keep doing that to each other and bringing back that neighbourly friendship that seemed to have gone in recent years. So I hope that continues. And then in terms of the hunting thing, the stags that didn't get shot this year will be bigger next year. So, get ready, get fit, and have a real awesome roar next year.
Absolutely. Legend, man. Thank you for your time on this Saturday, and I'll let you get back to your little family there and the office. It looks good, man. Nice cabinet.
Yep. It's my home office, my bookshelf, and my whiskey. So you always got to read a good book, and when you need a quiet moment, just have a little whiskey. And it's two pleasures of mine: reading and whiskey. So there you go.
Legend. I'll press stop.